be very easy to implement those areas. And basically the planning your project work is to create a realistic schedule of what it makes to get it planned work before done. And task should sequence in a way that it shows dependencies, because we are always dependent on something. In terms of HR, for example, we are dependent on our human resource, that will be a project manager, that will be a project assistants, associates, finance or budget departments. And in terms of our other stakeholders, we are dependent on the other stakeholders such as governments, such as NGOs and civil society, which we discussed yesterday. Dependency basically is a relationship that defines the order in which project tasks are carried out. So it is a kind of order that how your task will be carried out, or how your task will be sequences, and how you will plan to implement those tasks in order to achieve your end objectives and end goals. For example, it is a very common example. While making a soup, you need to chop your veggies or vegetables before you put them in the pot. So it is a very like a simple technique. It's just a simple example. And where to begin? You need to start with the work breakdown structure. You have to break down your work to different subtasks or sub outputs or sub activities. So it is very easy to understand. It is very easy to implement those activities. And while creating a project schedule, basically schedule in its visualization and presentation is mentioned below, and it is a very powerful tool to influence stakeholders and align expectations throughout the project. And your schedule should show project goals, resources and tasks. So basically your schedule is mostly dependent on your goals, resources in hand. It can be financial resources, it can be other kind of in-kind or in-cash support, and the task you have to need to schedule while carrying out any project. So you will see on the left hand side, you will see some lines that can be any activities. For example, we discussed milestone against targets and dates, and you further distribute it into different number of weeks. That in the week number 1 you have to, for example, if you are starting any project, week number 1 may be to have a staff on board, and week number 2 maybe to train your staff, and then week number 3 you will start your implementation and engage your key stakeholders. That can be your community members, that can be your government stakeholders, counterparts, or any direct or indirect community member or beneficiary. Basically, if you're breaking down the work, the main goal is to define the work and break it down into chunks, like the small pieces, so it can be easily delivered. For example, if you are making a house, you will have to distribute those tasks into small tasks. So for example, if you are constructing a building, your contractor will first lay down the foundation, and then it will distribute the different tasks. Someone will be responsible of the bricks, someone will be responsible of the wooden work, someone will be responsible for the electrician work, someone may be responsible for the sewerage lines, and so when those tasks are subdivided, it is very easy to convert into a big task, that is to achieve your end objective. For example, like a pyramid example, it is very flat in at the bottom, but if you go towards the top, you will see a point that is it is your end target. And scope creep happens when your project requirements slowly grow and grow. And scope creep, if we define it is a process that happens when a project requirements grow to a bigger and bigger. They can negatively affect your project. Whenever we are starting or implementing any project, in the beginning maybe it is very easy, but when you start implementing, the targets are bigger, the requirements are bigger, the tasks are bigger, and you have to align your activities with your project plan. So you have to keep in mind that the task will not remain the same. It will grow, it will start bigger, and then you have to plan accordingly. And then you don't have to do it alone, as we discussed in our yesterday's slide, that you don't have to do in isolation. You can be a part of team, so you can deliver it efficiently and effectively with an aim in your mind to achieve your end goal. That is, you have to meet the expectations of your key stakeholder or the sponsor. Here you will see some examples. what will you will produce? You will create basically a breakdown structure that shows the work that needs to be done, and then the goal is here to break the task into small chunks that I said earlier. For example, on your left hand side, there is example of a create a grow board. Like for example, yesterday we have shown an example of a tree or the green house effect. It was inside the box. There are different areas you have to define. For example, it involved research, it involved design, it involved development of that product, and then in the end, before you finally implement it, you have to test that device as well. You will see some examples here. Under the research, you will see different two research components, that the research the garden bed and the research the hardware. What kind of the hardware you will require, and you have to research on the garden bed, because not everyone is you know about the agriculture or the plants. And then you focus on the design, and then you develop. In the last, you have to test that design the garden bed, and then you have to test that hardware whether it is good to launch, good to implement. For example, when we are talking about the marketing, whenever we are going to launch any product, the marketer or the one who is launching that product, he try to have a understanding of the project, the demand of the project, and then the further and finally launch that project. Our fifth topic is team collaboration and task management. But they have a different specialty, or they have a different skills, and we have to utilize their skills accordingly. For example, at this chart, you will see a skill needed segment, and then you can assign the name and the qualification and year of experience. For example, here you can see the example is, for example, the last one is system architecture. The name is maybe Paul or anything, or the qualification they have like CTA, AWS, or any professional qualification required for any architecture, and then they have an experience of 2 years. And then you have to utilize their skills as per the project requirement. If someone is very good in the budgeting and financing and analysis, then you have to utilize their skills in the budget section of the finances and its implementation. If someone is good in the project management, then he can or she can lead that project in terms of the finance implementation. So you can make a skill sheet so you know the expertise of everyone. And then let's talk about dependencies, which we have talked earlier as well. When you sequence your tasks, you will need the dependencies in mind. There are four main types of dependencies: predecessor and successor. The first one is focusing on the finish to start part, and the second one is start to start, and the third one is how you will finish to finish, and the last one is start to finish. These are the examples you can see at the end. For example, the last one, a new payroll system must be running and tested prior to shutting down the old system. So from start to finish, they are implementing or they are launching a new system, but they have to close the previous one in order to make it a very successful model. And then you have to sequence your work, because there is always an ending point, a starting point and ending point, and between these points there are different segments. For example, they have distributed these tasks into different alphabets, and you can see the start and the end. You can subdivide your tasks into different groups. For example, if the task is to identify different key stakeholders, then you will further work on the stakeholder analysis. You will identify them, you will prioritize their needs, and then you will start working. There is another example which we have discussed in the earlier slide. And again, if someone has a specific specialty, if someone is trained in the project management, or someone is trained and have expertise in the social mobilization, then he or she must be assigned a duty of the social mobilization, or not, he or she will be assigned to sit in a finance or budget department. So it is very important to determine who does the work and who has the right skill for the right job. We always, we listen to that statement that right skill for the right person is very important. Otherwise, our end objectives, you cannot make it easy. For example, you can ask a simple question for yourself: does each member have the skills and experience necessary to complete their task? If they don't have the experience, they don't have the right expertise, initially they will not be hired. Even if they are hired, their expertise, they will be utilized as per the project demand and as per their personal efficiencies and what they are capable of. And then we talked about the transparency, because when the donor or the sponsor is giving us any money, there should be a transparency involved. It can be internal, it can be external. Those you are working in the project implementation, you must have witnessed the internal audit and the external audit to make sure that the project internal audit, basically it is the requirement of the organization or the government, and external order to make the things and to make the show that the budget utilization is on the right track. These kind of transparency and such measures should have to be taken. And then while creating a project schedule, there are few things you will have to make your schedule in the right way. For example, you have to work on the work breakdown structure. Then you can project schedule network diagram. You can see number one is like, design bed. The same example, then they are working towards building it, and then they are design, and then again building the hardware, and then they are further working on the integration part, and then finally the project is finalized. There are a few more examples how you can link it. And then again, if your schedule is complete, then you can you can show your project milestone, but we have discussed yesterday. You can show your resources and you can show your tasks. And again, the team, it is not very easy for someone to work in the isolation or to work in the silos. It is very important to depend on your team, to take your team all together. So, in the end, everyone is on the same page. And if, for example, if the whole team or the complete team is sitting in one of the conference room, and or the opposite side, your donor is or your sponsor is sitting, then you have to show as a complete team, and it can be only possible if you have developed a team, a good team. You have worked on their skills, you have worked on their training and development, you have worked on their capacities, and you have always tried to invest your finances in developing and enhancing their existing skills, so their up-to-date skills can be utilized, and in the end our main objective is to complete our tasks efficiently, and so the donor is satisfied, so our community or wherever we are working, they should be satisfied, and it can be only happen if we have a good team. And then, high team performance can be achieved by employing these behaviors. So you can consider these behaviors while employing or while recruiting any team. Use open and effective communication. You have to use a very effective communication, so it is very easy to understand for all of the stakeholders. It can be your internal stakeholders, can be your external stakeholders. Then further, you can work towards the team building opportunities, developing trust, so every member can trust the other member, managing conflicts in a constructive manner. Conflicts, there will be risks, but they have to deal in a professional manner, in a constructive manner. So there is a room for opportunity, there is a room for learning for everyone, and you have to encourage collaborative problem solving and encourage collaborative decision making, because if it's not collaborative decision making and not collaborative problem solving, then it is very difficult maybe to remain the team on the same page. Otherwise everyone will go into separate directions, and it is very difficult to achieve our end objective. For example, I can show a lecture related to team collaboration and task management. So this is basically called a RACI matrix. RACI stands for, you can see some alphabets, A, C, R, S, C. And the D1 is the driver who will assist us, that who will be responsible for a specific task, and R stand for the responsible person. If you are assigning any task to any person, then he or she will be responsible to complete that task, because while recruiting or while assigning any task, there are certain QRs employees should have to be adhered and should have to be completed while signing the contract. And A stands for accountable. If someone is responsible, and then he or she will be accountable as well. And then S stands for support. He or she has to support the project during the implementation phase. And then the C are those which can be consulted, and it can be advised as stakeholders or any subject matter specialists, and they can be informed. They are not, can be regularly consulted, but they have to be informed at various project phases. For example, let's take any component. For example, the first one, semi-annual review of the implementation and results. Here you will see some designation: head of the office, deputy head, project manager, portfolio manager, project manager, provincial coordinators. Here you will see A was accountable, C consulted, R responsible, and then further you can see the S support part, and C again consulted. So these, you can assign some alphabets to different positions, so you know that each person is responsible for the specific task. So in the end, he or she is the responsible person, and you can ask them. Like monitoring how you can close that for a specific project, because we are always focusing that project has a limited life. There is a starting period and there is a ending period. Project execution object readily performs exactly as they initially planned, because whatever we are planning, it is not necessary that it will be executed, it will be implemented as per our needs at whatever we will decide. It can be, there will be fluctuations, there will be some ups and down. You cannot imagine that maybe during the project implementation any natural or man-made disaster arises. You have to stop the activities. For example, back in like 3-4 years ago, when there was a COVID, everything was stopped. There was no, permission to having a get-together meeting, to have a in-person meeting. So we have to rely on the virtual meetings, and due to that reason, our project activities, and there was a major halt and major stop in different activities. And then if we further talked about the project resource management, basically it includes the processes to identify, acquire and manage the resources. So here we are focusing on three main areas. First, we have to identify, then we have to further acquire those resources, and then how we can manage those resources for the successful completion of the project. And then, in order to make sure the teams and the stakeholders are aware, you have to mostly work on the risk exposure as well. So you can mitigate them in a timely manner, so it will not affect your project implementation. And the monitor risk processes using performance information generated during the project execution to determine if these are the few reasons. You can see the risk management, you can see the project assumptions, if they are still valid, and project strategy is very important. And if we will further, try to dig out deep regarding the project resource management, you will see different areas. The first one is the plan resource management. Basically, it is to define how to estimate, acquire, manage, and utilize physical and team resources. Physical resources may be, the financial resources, which are, the in-hand support, or in cash, or the finances, or the budget utilization you will be implementing, you will be utilizing in different phases of the project. And then you can have to estimate activity resources. Obviously, there is always resources available, and you have to estimate different finances against different activities. You cannot spend all your budget on one single activity. You have to distribute it in a careful manner. So in the end, you must have something in your hand to close that project. And then you have to acquire resources, develop team, and then you have to be in a leading role, so you can manage that team. It is easy to develop a team, but it is not easy to manage that team. You can have to take them all together till the project is completed, because there will be problems, people will leave, new people will come, so it is very difficult to manage such team. And in the end, if you're managing them in an effective manner, in a professional manner, the end result will be very fruitful. And most importantly, again, you have to control your resources. Here you will see a differentiation in the project documents required. On the left-hand side, you will see a project management plan. You will see different 18 segments, and on my right, you will see 33 different documents. These are the different documents that can be, used in different phases of life, project life. For example, the change log, maybe the activity log, assumption log, risk register, risk report. So these are the different documents. They are easily available, and I can also provide. And same, while determining the budget, these are the three main areas you have to keep in mind, you have to consider. The first one is input, tools and technique required, and then the output. Again, now we are focusing on the risk part because there will be seen and unforeseen risks. And if I simply talk about the definition of the risk, basically a risk is an uncertain event or a set of events that can occur, will have an effect on the achievement of, I'm quoting an example of UN Women, so it can affect the achievement of UN Women program objectives. A risk consists of combination of probability, threat, opportunity, and the magnitude. And risk management, on the other hand, it is a process designed to identify the potential risk, assess in terms of likelihood and impact. So risk can be an event that can occur at any time, but the risk management is the process to identify the potential risk and assess it in terms of the likelihood and how it can impact the overall project performance. Why is it important for project and project managers? Because effective risk management help us to ensure our projects and programs are effective, relevant, results-based, results-driven, find innovative solutions, allocate resources, and safeguard our personal and beneficiaries and who are directly or indirectly linked with our project. And you have to know your risk and create mitigation plans. I'm also trying to stress on the mitigating part because there will be risks, but if you are able to mitigate those risks, you will minimize those risks. It will not have that impact, and you can when you're minimizing those risks, then you will be in a better position to implement it effectively and efficiently with the demand of the need or the request of our donors. A risk is an unknown event that can affect your project, and your team can understand the major risks and opportunities accordingly. And here you can, categorize the risk. For example, you can categorize the risk by avoidance, by mitigation, by transfer, and by acceptance. Avoidance is to remove risk areas from the project scope. Mitigation, do some risk response planning to reduce the likelihood so it will not occur. And if it is occurring again and again or in a similar manner, you have to approach it differently. Transfer and move risky work to someone else. For example, if specific task is assigned to a project assistant, he is not that experienced, you can transfer that specific task to someone, a professional, maybe a consultant, maybe you can hire someone else services from a government part, and then accept and deal with the risk. The risks will be there, you have to accept it, but you have to deal with them accordingly. You and your team understand the major risk opportunities facing your project effort, and you have to plan it accordingly. Here you will again see the how you can capture and managing risk by the risk register. Here you can see a risk register. I have mentioned it somewhere here, number 27. And again, there is the example. This is how it looked like. It is the outlook of this risk register. You can try to minimize it by brainstorming exercise. You can list down all the exercises and how it can impact. For example, if my subcontractor does not deliver their code according to the deadline, then a completion date will be a delayed. So this highlighted part, it is a risk. Here you can see on the green part, these are, different areas, and on the red part, these are the risks that identified, and it is up to us how you will identify them, how you will list them, how you can mitigate them and deal them and solve them accordingly. And these are some, definition. What is the difference between an event or the risk? An event is something that could happen during a project. A risk is a consequences of an event. So risk, it can be, happen during a project, but risk is a consequence. As a result of something, it can be a consequence of that event, and it is called risk. For example, number one definition, this you can see a project team could go on a strike because they are not paid fairly. So here it can be a risk, and the event, but the true answer is event. So here you can see, different definitions and how you can, identify whether it is a risk or whether it is a event. And then in the last, you can, maintain a risk register. So you will list down, jot down all your risk. You will try to identify mitigating strategies. You can, try to identify those gaps, and then you can assign your different tasks to a specialized person. So the risk can be averted or risk can be minimized. And we know that the risk can be quantitative and the qualitative. And you can do a quantitative risk analysis to help reduce the project uncertainty. Here are there are few annexures of the risk register. I can quickly show you. Here you will see the risk sheet. Basically, this is how it looks like. For example, the green part is the acceptance part, that it is accepted, and yellow part is the transfer part, and then the mitigate part and the avoid. So you will see the potential consequences: almost certain, likely, possible, unlikely, rare, and not significant, minor, moderate, major, and severe. You will see the red part as the the risk, which are can be severe, which can be major, and which can be moderate. Here you can try to identify in the risk part. Then you can identify the impact, how it can identify the your task or any project, and how you will respond it, and how you will plan it. Is a monitoring team who is responsible for the monitoring and evaluation part. So to make sure that the ongoing activities are on track, and if you are monitoring the activities, you have to go into the field, you have to do maybe you can have a beneficiary calls with your beneficiaries, you can take their feedback, you can go into the field, you can meet the beneficiaries, because it is very easy to report through someone else's eyes, but if you go personally into the field, you can see the real picture. And this is the definition of the monitoring and controlling. The monitoring and controlling process basically consists of those processes required to track, review, and regulate. So here you can see three main areas: track, review, and regulate. First, you have to track down the activities. Then you have to review them, either they are going in the right direction or it needs some improvement. And if in case of any improvement, then you have to regulate them to regulate the progress and the performance. So in the end, if you're responsible, you are answerable to the donor, then you have to show the monitoring progress. You have to show some certain indicators and the good practices. It can be case studies, it can be human impact stories. You can showcase your work that these are the successful models which we have identified during the project implementation. And monitoring and controlling involves evaluating change. You can recommend corrective or preventive actions, monitoring the ongoing project activities, and influence the factors. Basically, this is how the monitoring works. You can see you have to validate scope, you have to work on the scope part, you have to work on the schedule part, you have to work on the cost part, because if there is any project, there is a cost involved. And if it is not utilizing it properly, there will be a waste of fund and waste of time. Then you have to identify, the monitoring unit has to identify those risks which are occurring regularly, and in order to minimize and mitigate those risks, you have to monitor those risks, and you have to come up with the effective communication. You have to communicate the same risk to your donor or to your partner. And again, dependency, determination, and integration are very important part. There are four main areas. They can be differentiated and focusing on the dependencies. First one is the mandatory dependencies. They are the legally and contractually required or inherent in the nature of the work. For example, if you are working on any project, if it is related to environment protection, then you have to seek maybe some NOCs, like the no objection certificates from the relevant government partners. So it is the legal requirement of that project. Or maybe if a certain area, it is a kind of a restricted area, you have to seek the permission of the government, and then you have to go in those areas and start working that project. So it is the legal requirement. And then the discretionary dependencies are maybe the logic or the soft logic. They are maybe established based on the knowledge of the best practice. It is not compulsory, it can be discretionary. It is assumed on your best practices, whichever you are assuming. And then the external dependencies, it involves a relationship between the project activities and non-project activities. There are always the internal stakeholders and the external stakeholders. They are the direct beneficiaries and the direct beneficiaries. So you have to consider, you have to take all them together. And then again, the discretionary dependencies are basically referred to again the logic part, which we have discussed at the serial number 2. And then they are the lesson learned register. If you are implementing a project and you are in your first quarter, then there will be certain lesson learned, there will be certain case studies, there will be certain successful like human impact stories, maybe successful models that can be utilized, that can be considered as a lesson learned. If that model is effected and implemented successfully, then you can take it to the next stage, or maybe to the next quarter, and you can make a register like the risk register we have mentioned earlier. So you will not repeat those mistakes again and again. This is basically, if we can recall our yesterday's part regarding the results-based management. Basically, these are the main areas of the result-based management. The first one is if we can start from the right to the left, it started from the result part, that is impact, then the outcome, then the outputs, and then the activities and the inputs. Inputs and the activities, they are directly, having an impact or having results based on your activities, and then they can further impact the output and the outcome statements. And these are the few examples. Resource inputs can be the resources need to carry out the activities set of actions. Outputs, a group of people of an organization that can has an improved capabilities or the abilities. And outcome, basically these are as I discussed this yesterday, it can be institutional people, how they can do it something differently, and how you can monitor the behavioral change or the change in performance. And the last and not the least, the most important one is the impact. It can be a long-term effect or the short-term, long-term positive and as well as the negative effect on the local population or the local beneficiary, and it is broader than the program. Program only contributes to it. So this is basically a typical framework. It is called a results chain, and it can also be in depth with the help of a log framework while drafting any project. And again, we have discussed this yesterday as well. The SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, attainable, relevant, and the time bound. Does this describe in detail what is to be accepted, yes or no? Can it be measured? If yes, how? Yes or no? And achievable, yes or no? Is it feasible? It is acceptable? It can be either implemented or not. And relevant, is it linked to the national priorities, or it is just to complete for the sake of the project? And time bound, does it specify by when? Because whenever there is a project or the program, there are certain boundaries or certain projected time you have to finish those areas. And then the second last part is the project closure activities and the deliverable review. You can measure your project success through with the help of project outcomes and the outputs. If outcomes and the outputs, you have there are certain activities, if they are on a right track, you have managed and completed it successfully, then you are on a right track. Otherwise you have to work on different areas. And then you have to keep track of your project to stay in control. Otherwise, if you're not in control, and if you're not keeping you're tracking your activities, you're not keeping the tracking of the activities, then there will be certain difficulties. And by keeping track of your project, it helps to measure and communicate your successes and challenges as well as opportunities for improvement, because there are always the room for improvement, and you can bring the improvement with the passage of time while you are implementing any project. And these are the few different. It can be used as a chart that these are the to-do activities. These are work in progress, and these are the done activities, the completed activities. You can simply color code it, and you can identify, and you can assign different tasks to different colors, and you can assign and you can display in a form of a panflex, or maybe in a form of a chart, and you can display it in the office, and you can track it regularly, maybe daily or maybe weekly, or even at least monthly. So some projects you have to these may be projects, these are the pending activities, these are the activities, the middle one, they are the work in progress, and the done activities can go on the extreme right. So this is again a simple chart you can display in your room to do activities in progress, testing, and done part. It can be easily created with the help of these colorful papers. with the help of a marker, maybe with the help of a masking sheet. So you need these sticking notes or markers or masking tape, so you can display it in your room and you can see it regularly. So it is called a Kanban board. So you can easily craft it. You don't have to be skilled in that exercise. All you need is small ingredients, and you can display in your room, and you can progress and track it regularly. And you have to stay aligned with your stakeholders. It's very important, because the importance of the stakeholder is very evident and very important. You have to regularly communicate with them. You have to show them your success, so they can remain, they have a confidence in your project and your implementation team. And then you can establish methods for the following people. You can, your project team can focus on the things you're doing towards your work, and then you have to focus on your sponsor, and then lastly your stakeholder. And there's a few tips or a few methods or a few advices, but these are not just limited to these things. It can be, you can prepare every meeting, you can create a circulate an agenda, so everything can remain on track. You can communicate it regularly through the meetings, through the emails. You can create a place or progress for collecting feedback, for example, that Kanban board. It is better to over communicate than not at all. Over communication is good, but to stop your communication is not good, because if you're not communicating, your progress will be, you will not be able to share your progress with your donor, and maybe they will think that you're not doing anything. And recognize your team. You can always recognize your team. You can always appreciate your team. It can be intrinsic motivation, it can be extrinsic motivation. Management student, they must know the difference between the intrinsic and the extrinsic motivation. There are the certain different motivational skills and motivational areas you can use and you can adopt while working with a different team. And most importantly, proofread your email. Whenever you are drafting any email, you have to proofread them. You have to check them, because it is going to your stakeholder, and one person, for example, the senior person, he or she should be assigned to communicate with your donor, not the junior, or not the interns who are working in your organization. And the status report will show you that what is your status, what actions or what decisions you have to require to show your progress, and it can be included with the help of the burn down chart. And then you have to finish up and most importantly celebrate. Whenever we have any achievement, whenever we pass any exam, for example, we try to celebrate those achievements, because it is very important to celebrate. It will boost up the motivation of the team, and the next time whenever they will deliver, they will try to deliver with more enthusiasm, with more energy, and with more synergy. That will help you to achieve your projects easily and with less difficulty. And while wrapping it up, you have to make sure that it refer back to your initial goals. Whenever you are starting any project and whenever you are ending that project, you have to refer back to make sure that the outcome, the outputs, or the outcome areas, they are aligned, and it should they are not detract from your original goal. And they take time to review, and you can celebrate your achievement. It is not any restriction on that part. And even though the project will soon be closed, the desired change will continue to deliver. You have to focus on the sustainability part. For example, if you are working in one of the project on the health part, you can involve the government stakeholder, because even the project is finished, that government will be there, the department will be there, so they will be easily to sustain those areas, and you can keep track of how that project will be continue to make an impact. And even if it is officially closed. And lastly, your team can, document key takeaways. For example, the example of case studies, the human impact stories, which can be quoted at the early stages of the project. And these are, the different areas which normally focusing while we are working on the project management processes. It is focusing on the initiation part, planning part, execution part, monitoring part, and closing part. It is also called the project management life cycle. So it started with the initiative process, then you will plan it, then you will execute it, the implementing part, and then you will monitor and control part, and the lastly, the closing part, you will close the project officially. And these are, the project processes. It can start from by developing a project charter, which we have discussed yesterday, then project management plan, direct and manage project work, project knowledge, and monitor and control, perform integrated change control, and how you can close that project or the specific phase of that project. And then, there will be a certain change request and you have to review them and deal them accordingly. It can be corrective action, it can be preventive action, it can be defect repair, and can be update as well, that can occur at the different phases of the project. And then if you work towards the closing part, then the project manager or the team leader or the supervisor, he or she, they have to keep these things in mind. They conduct a post-implementation review at all levels, create a post-implementation review PIR report, archive the PIR report for future reference. Either you can archive it at the cloud model, or you can save it in your laptops or in different certain hard disks, so you can to refer it back for any future reference or any project deliverable, or if you are representing your project to the donor in maybe in near future. And these are the 3-tier approach while working on the post-implementation review. And these are the details of the 3 tiers. When I will share this presentation, you can have a detailed look into this the 3 tiers. Project closure checklist. This is very important. Let me show you how it is. The project closure checklist looks like. Closure checklist. You have to make sure you can draft this checklist. It can be modified as per your needs, because the project needs can be different for different projects. So first of all, you have to review your project management plan to ensure the scope and the requirement part, which we have discussed yesterday. Then you have to get the approvals and the signature, because sometimes there is a donor requirement that every project document or the final report, it should be signed by the maybe any senior manager and the team leader or the supervisor. And then you can document the lesson learned, that what went wrong, what went good, and what can be replicated or implemented in future as well. And then number 4 part, you have to focus on the settled payments part. Maybe there will be certain payments left and they will be pending payments. You have to pay to the vendor, to the printer, to any catering company. Maybe you have organized any event, still the payment is pending. So you have to, and most importantly, you have to pay your employees as a salary part. If it is still pending, you have to pay them. You have to close that salary segment. And then you can, number 5 is you can finalize the reports. You can create an index or archive project documents. Maybe if you have a good IT system, you can create it at the cloud, or if you have a basic hardware system, then you can store your projects in different laptops, in different desktop computers, or maybe in any external hard. At least you can use it for future references. And then you can release project resources, hand over project ownership, and then the second last, conduct a project closeout meeting. Whenever the project is started, there is a specific meeting in the beginning, so you can set the different objectives and the goals, that how you will continue to implement and to achieve those goals. And in the same manner, you have to organize another meeting, conduct another close-down meeting, so you can identify those areas which you have completed in different span of time. For example, maybe a year, and then obviously you will finish up and celebrate, because you have implemented that specific project in a timely manner. You have achieved all your objectives, you have achieved all your goals, and most importantly, you have satisfied the donor or your sponsor. So let's go to the last part, the lesson learned and the best practices. Basically, the best practices, there are different types of PMO, project management organization, or the offices in organization. Each type varies in degree of control and influence. They are, different. They can be differentiated with the help of the control they have on certain things, or the influence they can assert on different project objectives of the implementation part. Supportive PMOs, project management office, provide a consultative role. They can focus on the best practices and then the lesson learned. The degree of control provided by the PMO is very low, and the controlling part, controlling PMO's project management offices provide support and require compliances through different and various means. And it can be, adoption of project management frameworks, methodologies. You can use the specific templates, forms, and the tools. Like I have shared different templates and the different tools and different diagrams to make the participant understand. And then the conformance of the governance framework. You have to, comfort with your governance framework so it can be implemented easily. And it can be, you can focus on the directive part. Directive part, allows you to have a control of the project, and then you can set the benchmarks. So at least, you can have a certain benchmark and certain best practices. You can compare it for the future needs as well. And this is the diagram of the lesson learned. First, you have to identify those comments and the recommendation. Then you can further document and share those findings. You can analyze them. It is a qualitative part. Maybe it can be a story, maybe it can be a case study. And if it is a improvement in certain figures, for example, there is an improvement of 1% in the malnutrition, or maybe the mother-child health, then you can identify the qualitative part and the quantitative part, and you can report it, and then you can store it in the repository. Repository can be any storage space. It can be cloud-based, it can be any hardware component wherever you are storing your projects and all your success stories, and then you can retrieve it. You can use it for any future reference. Best practices and the lesson learned, basically these are the building blocks of the organizational learning as well as the organizational knowledge. And BP is a good work practice and innovation captured, and the lesson learned is a poor work practice or the experience. So there you can see the difference. Best practices basically is a good work, and the lesson learned is a poor work, but it is a lesson learned. You have learned something negative, and then you can convert them into a best practice. So that weaknesses can be further converted into strength, and they can be implemented and highlighted in your project areas. And these are for example, the difference between the project scope and the lesson learned tool. You can initiate, plan, execute, monitoring, and close, and then you can have a lesson learned database. While in planning, you can have a lesson learned worksheet, and if you are executing, then you can maintain a lesson learned log. If you're monitoring and controlling, again you can have a lesson learned log, and then if you're closing the project, then you can lastly focus on the post implementation review project, or the report that what went wrong and what was the good practice you have achieved, or the successful models you can replicate in your future project. And maybe you can, applying for any donor project, you can quote that project that was a successful model, and we have to replicate that successful model in other areas of your country or any part of the world. And how lesson learned should be used on new projects. For every new project, the team being assembled to perform, it should require to review all available lessons pertaining to the task directly. For example, same type of project, or indirectly it can be different type of project. So these are the multiple phases. As an input, you have to risk management activities, you have to focus them. So at least while identify the lesson learned, you can identify those risks, and you can manage those risks and use different tools to identify and mitigate them accordingly. And then you can use them as an input to train the plans. And then lastly, as a part of the continuous improvement process, because there is always a room of improvement, there is always a space for improvement while implementing and doing or be a part of any project. Let me show you the lesson learned template. can start it with the serial number and dates, project number, and then further you can categorize it. You can categorize as per your needs, and then you can problems and success summary. You can present it here. Problems, as I mentioned it earlier, it can be a lesson learned, a successful. It can be a best practice, and what impact it has on certain categories. And then further you can recommend or remark it accordingly as per your need. And these are, the different instructions while making a lesson learned document or any while drafting any lesson learned document. They identify the topics, review and analyze it, and share the knowledge base. From the PM BOK book 6th and 7th edition, and PM BOK stands for Project Management Book of Knowledge. This is how if someone is applying for the project management professional qualification or exam, this is a very easiest tool. You can go through it, and you can, if someone is going for the PMP exam, basically it is a scenario-based, most of them are scenario-based questions, and you have to answer as per your knowledge. There are certain scenarios, there are certain areas you have to deal with them accordingly. For example, we have started with the initiation part. Initiation part first started with a project charter. It comes under the integration, and then you can focus on the stakeholder part, and then if you move towards the planning part, it is the most important and the extensive part. It started with a scope. You have to plan the scope management, you have to collect the requirements, you have to define the scope, and then you have to create a work breakdown structure. For example, you are breaking down your activities into small chunks and activities. And then you have to schedule your activities. You have to plan and schedule management. You have to define your activities. You have to sequence your activities. You can prioritize them, which activities is most important, which needs our immediate attention. And then you have to develop, and then you have to estimate activity duration. As I said, that the activities are scenario and competency based. So if someone can, spend a time on this process, he or she can easily, pass that exam. Basically, that exam, it's like a 3-hour exam. But if you are going through different books, which I can share, if someone is interested, or if we have any PMP aspirant here, he can or she can use those books as a reference for study material. And then you can focus on the cost part, the quality part. After the planning part, you can see the executing part. Here you can see again the resources. Few different things will repeat in different areas. It will be repeated in the executing part. It will be repeated in the planning part. It can be replicated or repeated in the monitoring part as well. So each part is very important. Here you can, while executing, you have to acquire the resources, you have to utilize your fund, you must have the resources in hand, you have to develop a team, you have to manage a team. It is everything we have discussed in different slides. And then you have to integration part again, you have to direct and manage project work, you have to manage project knowledge. And then further you have to focus again on the stakeholder part. Here you can see a new thing which is called procurement. Procurement is something, you are procuring anything while implementing any project. For example, if a certain project requires buying of any project, then you have to contact your procurement unit. He or she will procure it for you by following the internal protocols. And then you have to keep the risks in your mind, how you will implement those risks and how you respond to it. And communication, how you will manage the communication internally and externally. Then this is the monitoring and controlling part. You have to validate the scope, control scope. Again, you can see the scope part is repeating here. Schedule, you have to control the schedule, control the cost. You have to integrate the monitoring and the control part. And again, you have to control your procurement. You have to monitor stakeholder management. You have to effectively manage the stakeholder, because if the stakeholder is at any time of the project is not happy, then there will be certain restrictions. Maybe, the funds will be delayed, implementation can be delayed, and you will not be able to achieve your end results. And you have to monitor the risk. Communication part again, control resources and control quality. Again, here is the new part. It is not, just, you will procure some things, you will buy some equipment. You have to make sure that the quality is not compromised. You have to close that project, and you can by closing that specific project or the phase. What is project management basically? It is a basically international certification to recognize project managers who have proven their skills to successfully manage projects. So basically, while drafting a project or application, you have to make sure that you are reflecting certain projects you have completed in recent past. So these three main areas can be focus, people, process, and business environment. You will be judged through different competency-based questions on these three areas. How much effective you are while managing your people, maybe your HR, how you are familiar with the process, project techniques, and how you are familiar with the business environment or the project environment. Let me quickly, this is basically the PMI triangle, the project management triangle. They focus on the three main areas: the ways of working, the power skills, and the business acumen. And these are the definitions. Ways of working clarify recommended there is no more than one way to work the to get the work done today. As we all know that if we are if we are walking on a track, there is not a one maybe on direction. We can choose any direction. So for a project, there will be certain limitations, but there will be a different methods to implement that project. And then the power skill, it is focusing on the leadership skills and the business acumen. Professionals with the business acumen of the business knowledge understands the macro and macro influences while implementing any project. So these are the few benefits. Now till now almost there are 1.2 million PMP certification worldwide. And why PMP? It is very beneficial. And these are the few statistics from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics Department. And why PMP again? These are few, the case studies or the few successful models. And why PMP? These are the few employment trends, cost and global implications. And here you can see the GDP part. Because, there's an assumption and there's a report that GDP might be at risk and from 2019 to 2030. And here is the South Asia part, and it is 28.1. And this was the salary survey, that what is the difference between the PMP and the non-PMP. So these are the few facts and figure. And these are the few facts and figure again, that different rankings are there. And if someone has completed project management certification, there is a clear difference between his or her salary. And this is the method. This is the most important. If someone is going for a project management exam, or someone wants to apply for the exam, first of all, if you have a 4-year degree, then as you said, then you need a 36 months of experience. You have to show at least 3 years of experience. And otherwise, if you have a secondary education department, for example, 12th standard, then you have to show the 60 hours. So it is advisable you go for this 4-year degree part. At least you must have a graduation, so you can show the 36 months of experience and you can apply. Then you can gather your information and submit your application. While applying for the application, sometimes applications are going through directly, but sometimes you have to go you have to go through the audit part. In audit part, normally they ask for the copy of your degree, they ask for the verification of the experience. If you have quoted your experience 36 months, but you have not reflected it in the form of any document, then they might need your supervisor's signature so they can endorse you. It can be your email. For example, when I applied, they asked my supervisor, so I have mentioned my supervisor's email, and then when they confirmed, then my application was successful. And then again, you have to provide the certification of the 35 hours of project management training. You can, this kind of training, maybe, you can quote certain hours while giving them any certificate, but there are different online certifications available. You can quote those certification, you can pay them, and you can acquire those certification, and you can upload while doing that exam. And then you can schedule exam. There are different dates, and the main exam taker is the Pearson VUE Testing Center. It is an online exam. You have to sit continuously for at least 3 hours. It can be different time of the day. It can be night time as well. So you have to mentally and physically prepare for the exam. When you will submit your application, you can schedule exam, then you can take and pass your exam. These are the certain exams and certification. It depends on your experience. If you have 0 to 3 years experience, you can opt for these exams. These are the specialized exams. PMI, RMP, PMP is the most famous one. And you can use and join your local chapter, and it will help you to connect, develop, and give feedback. And these are, the Pakistan chapters. And on my right hand side, you will see the Asia Pacific. If you go to their website, you can see the Asia Pacific, and you can click your certain country or your association. And you can, you have to maintain it. As I said, you don't have to repeat that 3-year cycle. You have to complete 60 PDUs, project development units. This one. And while maintaining your project management certification, if someone has passed the exam, you can maintain it through different means. For example, you have taken part in this 2 days exercise or 2 days training. You can click that part, course or training, and you can show certain hours. For example, we have spent like 2 hours yesterday and 2 hours today. So we have like 4 hours, we can reflect it there. So these are the methods or the focus, how you can connect, learn, and grow. And these are the recommended ratings. As you said, you can, go through the PM Bog Guide, 6th edition. You can go through the PM 7th edition and the PM Bog Guide 6th edition, Agile Practice Guide, Agile Practice Guide again, and then how to achieve PMP exam successfully, 3rd edition. And this processes I have already, the first one I have already shared, and the second I can share my email in the end, and anyone can contact me so I can share the relevant material. This is the dashboard, how your PMP dashboard will look like. First one, it will show you your personal information, and then this one can show you the tick part, show that you have completed the certification. This is how you can maintain the PDUs, project development units. If you can write article, you can mention it. If you are part of the training, you can. So this is my dashboard looks like. In the end, you can get your certification, 3-year certification, and if you maintain it, you can easily pass your exam.